Hello everybody, Cage Fighting's QuestionCast back again. We're here to A those Qs. Andy Gillard here. Hope you've got over the thriller minute that was last week's face-off and next double combo.
Hi, it's Matt Guy here. How are we all doing this evening?
Yeah, no, I've calmed down a bit since last week.
So no more rants about next then this week, Stu?
No, let's just banish it to history and never talk about it again.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the films we've got coming up, and it's going to take a long way to get worse than next for me, I think. Got to be some absolute dreck to beat that into the wooden spoon place. Yeah, so we've got a little bit of film news this week, gents. Tenet, the Christopher Nolan film, has been indefinitely postponed. I know it was postponed back to June and then July and then start of August, and then they've just decided to completely put it on hold for now. From what I've heard, I think it was like a $800 million budget. So they want to make sure that they can get everyone into the cinema before they release it. Makes perfect sense. But as a massive Chris Nolan mark, Matt, what film should I be watching so I can put the blues away?
Well, I'm thinking long and hard about this now. Because you're so sad, I think you need to divert your brain to be pondering the questions that Inception brings and all of the trials and tribulations that's going to play on your mind. But I do think that Interstellar is criminally underrated. I really, really enjoyed Interstellar. And you look back at all the films that Christopher Nolan's done so far, and Stu, I know that you're massively, massively into Christopher Nolan. And even if you want to just kind of kick back and relax with like the Dark Knight trilogy, obviously it's not easy watching as in family friendly that you're going to get your 5-year-old to watch, but it's not quite as thought provoking as Inception. But for the reasons that you want to get over your disappointment, I think Inception's the one for you, mate, today.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen Inception since it was at the cinema.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost one of those films where I think it was so perfect that first time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if I want to go back and revisit it. It was such a great experience.
It's funny you say that. Now I link a kind of theory to or an effect that I call the Lucky Slevin effect, because once you've seen Lucky Slevin once, Lucky Number Slevin, sorry, you're never gonna watch it again really and have the same impact. And I think that might be the same with Inception. It's been a long, long time since I've seen it, so it would probably be. But yeah, I think to get your mind off your disappointment, that's the way to go, mate.
That's a great suggestion, thank you. The other little bit of news we've had is that it appears that Fox are finally going ahead and they're going to give us New Mutants. I mean, it's only, 18 months, 2 years since it was supposed to be out originally. So yeah, that's coming 28th of August. Obviously, they've not been happy with this film for some time. Now we're obviously in this pandemic world. Are they sending this film out to just sort of die quietly without any eye seeing it? What do you think, Stu?
I think they should have just burnt it with fire years ago. Since I'm presuming that this is now the last one under Fox ownership with the Marvel Disney buyout. So, and how utterly awful Dark Phoenix was. This was like is this going to be the going out with a bang? And rarely for me, I actually did watch the trailer for it, whenever that was, and it looked all right. But that's all it looked. It looked all right. So I think you're probably right there. They are just chucking it out and just get it over and done with, and then just integrate it into the MCU in a few years' time when everyone's forgot it all exists.
Yeah. I mean, it's a PG-13 horror film. Yeah. With the best will in the world, it's not going to be brilliant. I'm kind of interested in the same way that I like watching The Room. That I know it's going to be a clusterfuck, but I will watch it regardless. So obviously we've put a call out for some Twitter questions, and Matt, I think we've had one in. Is that right?
Yeah, this is the one that I want to talk about them really, because there's a lot to play with really with the questions. So David Evans, friend of the show, has asked us after we've had a brief flirtation of Tarantino looking to direct a Star Trek film, what director/movie crossovers would you like to see? So Stu, what would you like to see? What kind of director/franchise or movie crossover would you want to see?
I thought about this quite a lot this afternoon, and going on to a bit of last week with he was mentioned then, John Woo directing a Fast and Furious film.
Ooh, I like that.
It's just think of the iconic John Woo tropes that we talked about last week, and with the already nonsense world of Fast and Furious. It's guaranteed winner. It has to be. I don't know why it's not happened already.
That would be a perfect mesh.
Yeah, it would fit like a glove.
I like that. My answer. All right, my honourable mention, because I have to do an honourable mention. I want to see Edgar Wright doing a Marvel film, and they took that away from us. And I'll be honest, I've never quite got over that.
There's parts of it in that film. Ant-Man talking about.
Yeah.
There's still parts of it in there. There's a kind of like you can see the threads that was his. But I know what you mean.
Yeah. I mean, at least we got his one comic book adaptation, which was Scott Pilgrim, which is a film I absolutely adore. But I think my answer to the question, I'd love to see somebody like David Lynch, somebody who does, the out there mind bending stuff. I'd like to see him try and do something, just like maybe a film noir, like a classic film noir, something back like the Edward G. Robinson style of Scarface way back when. Try and see him do something that's fairly straight laced, just to see how he could operate, because he's the kind of guy who you obviously can't put him in a box, because his films, they go off on tangents and they go here, there and everywhere. I'd quite like to see what he could do if he had some constraints on him, see where he could take it. And I love a film noir. I like that dark, gritty, the duplicitous woman, the crime caper that goes on behind it. I'd love to see something like that. It'd never happen, and I can see why, because David Lynch wouldn't want to be constrained by a studio. But those old studio system films, to see a maverick like him working within that would just be wonderful.
Amazing. It's one to think about, isn't it? That the different combinations that you can have of all sorts of different worlds that meet different styles in terms of direction, and that is. I was thinking about it for myself, and I'd read an article not that long ago about how Stanley Kubrick was amazed by Ridley Scott's Alien, and how it was all put together. And I'd really like to see a Kubrick Alien, believe it or not, because I'd want it, like, for reasons I mentioned on the last pod about The Shining, and how it does so much with so little to build up tension and to build up drama. I'd love to see how Kubrick got his hands on an Alien film. I know that sci-fi in that respect isn't probably what you associate really with Kubrick, but I think the suspense that would be built, which is why I much prefer Alien to Aliens, which I think a lot of people prefer it the other way around. Alien being a sci-fi film to me, Aliens being an action film.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I'd really like to see him Kubrick get his hands on an Alien film and push the boundaries in terms of suspense and actual horror, as opposed to guns with a really shitty sound effect on the Alien has.
I'd quite like to see someone as well, like, I'm a big fan of Ari Aster. He's two pieces of art that he's put out, and that's what they are. They are pieces of art. I'd love to see him just do something batshit crazy, an action film, a face-off type action film where he can just go as crazy as he wants, and just to see how someone with his twisted view on the world, how he could work within that. That'd be incredible. So I had a quick question. I was talking to a friend not long ago, and apparently we're recording on what would have been Robin Williams' 69th birthday.
Oh.
So my question, or the question that I was talking to my friend, what would be the first film that jumps into your head when you mention Robin Williams? Matt?
Got to be Mrs. Doubtfire for me. And I think, and the reason it jumps into my head is because ITV2 must have that film on repeat every week. You see it all the time. But I recently watched Jumanji again. And just like that film, while CGI wise has aged, that film hasn't aged in terms of entertainment one bit for me. Absolutely loved it. One thing that E4 did, which was quite entertaining, they put a different spin on Mrs. Doubtfire in a trailer and made it out to be kind of a psychotic stalker. Like they mixed the trailer around to make it out like Mrs. Doubtfire was actually a stalker of the children, and that Pierce Brosnan was actually the hero. So go out of your way to try and find that because it's really, really funny. But yeah, Mrs. Doubtfire for me will be the one that jumps out like a sore thumb.
It's very much a classic of our generation, that one.
Yeah.
What do you think, Stu? Where do your mind go to?
Exactly the same place. I think it's a consequence of being the similar age. That there's a few. There's Mrs. Doubtfire, Jumanji, like you said, Matt said, and the other one's Hook for me.
How can I forget Hook?
Yeah, Hook was again a staple of childhood. I mean, I'm going to bend the rules a bit because I did watch him in Mork and Mindy first, because it was sort of on daytime TV all the time, and obviously I spent a lot of time with my granddad and nan growing up when mum was at work, so they always had that on, and I love that show. But yeah, Hook and Mrs. Doubtfire for me. He's just a genius. He was just a genius, wasn't he? And it was just unfortunate that he's well, as with all geniuses, they all have demons, and his were too bad to bear. But I can't think of anything bad that he was in, really. I can't even remember the name now. There was a film, his last film that he made. It was a Christmas film. It was a couple of years ago, and I watched that because it was a Christmas film, not knowing he was in it, and then he appeared in the titles, and I kind of like welled up because he was back.
Yeah, it was him.
And then I knew nothing about it, but even in that, his last role, he was great. He's just
a Merry Christmas Miracle.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
there's so much about Robin Williams that we forget. Like his stand-up as well. He's really entertaining, and I haven't seen any others that were of similar. But did you ever see 1 Hour Photo?
Yes.
I mean, it's not amazing, but it was strange to see him in a new role completely. And you talk about tension at the end of that film. That's tension as well. It's a very edge of your seat film. It is. Sure, you couldn't have put it better, mate. When you talk about kind of geniuses having their issues, and a real shame. To be fair, glad you brought him up. Andy, what jumps out to you?
Well, 1 Hour Photo was going to be the one I did, because I don't think he gets the respect that's due for his dramatic acting. I think there's something about when you see people who are mostly associated with comedies, when you see them turn into a straight role, they can either sink or swim, and I always felt he swam. That, and obviously Good Will Hunting. I mean, that film, it breaks me every single time. And knowing that the line about his wife farting when she was asleep, knowing that was ad-libbed and that their reactions were genuine, makes me love that scene all the more. So those are the two that sprang to my mind, just because everyone knows him as a comedic actor and he's great at it, but there's a lot more to him as well. He was a bit of an all-rounder, I think.
You know, I haven't seen in ages. Do you remember Jack? The one where he plays, God,
that was a lovely film, that was,
it was.
And Patch Adams, that was another one I remember being a big fan of.
And Aladdin, of course, as well.
Of course. Oh. He was the main man himself, the genie.
Which was pretty much all ad-lib.
That's an incredible feat, really. I mean, both from the performer and from the artists doing the work as well. That's incredible, that is, when you think about it.
So I read something about that probably about a month or so ago when I watched it again, and they said that they just put him in a booth and just let him go, and then they animated around what he'd done rather than the other way around.
Amazing.
I mean, this was before motion capture, so it was all hand drawn. That's why it kind of looks like him in a weird way. Because it really is.
It's fantastic. I need to watch that film again. I've only ever seen, I think I've seen it in like across 2 or 3 sittings. I don't think I've ever sat through and done it all in one go. Not that I can remember anyway.
Disney Plus.
Yeah, there's no excuse now, is there? Everything's available everywhere. Right. So on to the normal portion of the question cast. Question 1, you know what it is. What have you been watching this week? Stu.
So I mentioned this last week about this this program on this. Well, it's a kind of anthology series on Netflix called The Sinner, with Jessica Biel and Bill Pullman, and that's in the first series. The second series is Bill Pullman and someone else because he's a detective, So it's like a case of each person who's been wrongly, you think wrongly accused of a murder of some kind, which seems obvious at first, and then he delves deeper into it, and there's kind of twists, and it gets in some really dark places at times. I think it's only like 8 to 10 episodes per season. It's not very long, but it's just really, really good. It's really, really well made. And there's 3 seasons of it now, and I'm gonna watch that next. But the second season's got remember the guy who was did the American guy who did Orange Wednesdays?
Yes.
Yeah, he's in it playing a really creepy kind of like sect, head of a sect in the middle of the woods, which you think of him doing on Orange Wednesdays, and it's a complete opposite role to him. But yeah, it's a really serious, really, really excellent writing. It's just a hidden Netflix gem. It says Netflix original, but that could mean anything. It could be from something else. Apart from that, I watched The Witch at last, which is just. I mean, I went in knowing its reputation and our love of Ari Aster, like you mentioned already, and it's just you can't even say a single thing about it without ruining it. It's just one of them. Like I said, it's a piece of art, and it joins that class of being a piece of art. It really does. But,
So a quick question on Sinner. It sounds similar to True Detective. Would that be accurate?
Just about to say that. Yeah.
Similar kind of not as good as the first season of True Detective, of course. The second one could get in the next bin. Season 3's okay. Season 3's all right. True Detective, I quite enjoyed that one. But it's that similar kind of vibe, yeah.
Okay, cool. But yeah, the Witch has been on my list for a while, and it's after you mentioned it to me earlier in the week, I have bumped it up. I just haven't had a chance to squeeze it in yet. My viewings this week, I've been watching some trash TV. I found a show called Deep Fried Masters, and it's the most redneck show I've ever seen. So there's basically 3 judges and about 10 contestants at the start, and they all have to deep fry some food, and they'll deep fry cakes or pies or just anything you can imagine. The one guy deep fried some Twinkie bars and tried to do some candy floss with it. Obviously, it went to shit because he was deep frying it, for crying out loud. But yeah, it's redneck, Great British Bake Off. It's great fun. And the other thing I watched this week was a film called Palm Springs, which has just been released. And it's Andy Samberg and Christina Milioti, who was she was the mother from How I Met Your Mother. And she's also in one of the Black Mirror episodes. And it's basically, it's like Groundhog Day, but they're stuck at this wedding in the middle of the desert, and all hilarity ensues. And it's comedy with a heart, which is my kind of thing generally. Really funny. I actually laughed out loud, which I don't normally do. But it's got J.K. Simmons in as well. And there's just something about J.K. Simmons trying to do comedy, because he's such a gruff, mean bastard. When he says something funny, it just really tickles my funny bone every time. So I'd thoroughly recommend that movie. Matt, what have you been up to this last week?
Well, I've got a recommendation for you, mate, on the basis of your trash TV. Although I see his videos on Facebook, what I assume he's on YouTube. There's a Scottish guy called Dazza who does a series called Does It Fry? And he'll put things into a fryer at home and basically rate them, and you think, what is this load of shit? But as you start watching it, man, it's proper funny viewing. So I think the latest one was a 6-inch Subway wrapped in a Domino's pizza. Does it fry? And then he'll eat it, and we get to watch him suffer through it. So it's definitely worth a watch.
And that's just on YouTube. Is it?
Yeah, it will be. Yeah, it's good. It's a good laugh. In terms of what I've been watching, a couple of things really. I've only watched 2 episodes of it. So if you guys haven't seen it, maybe you can give it a watch and give me your thoughts as well. Cursed on Netflix. It's a wizardry, witches, medieval feel, kind of run of the mill kind of program really. What drew me to it is Frank Miller's the executive producer,
Okay.
And I'm yet to see that in it yet. It's not yet as dark as I want it to be. It's a little paint by numbers at the minute, a little bit too safe. But I'm going to keep going with it because it has that crossover feel that Game of Thrones and The Witcher has given the world. Everyone wants to see that at the moment. So I'm willing to continue on with that. Whether it's going to be what happened with the new Tales of Sabrina or whatever it was called, which I actually really enjoyed at the start, but then proper trailed off with that. I'm not sure, but as a new program, that's what I'm currently watching. And
I will say that, just to jump in, it's got the worst teaser of all time on Netflix when it's just her standing on a rock with some CGI wolves, and then nothing said. It just kind of circles around and it ends. I thought, what's this about?
Exactly.
So shouting it out's a good thing, because going on that, no one in their right mind would even give it a chance.
Mm-hmm. Well, the reason we started watching it in the first place is because my wife, it has, the film The Huntsman. It has that feel about it, so it's something that you'd watch with your missus, kind of thing, really. That's might be a bit, but then when I saw it was Frank Miller was the exec producer, I thought, this actually might have a bit of substance. It might be a bit more gory and graphic than originally led on. We're not quite there yet, but it'll get there. It'll get there, I think. I'm also rewatched, just as a kind of a pick me up film from kind of a tough week at work. Watched Blackball, if you've ever seen it. The film about the bad boy of British bowls.
Yeah.
Really,
saw that at the
really,
cinema. Yeah.
Really, really entertaining, under the radar British sports film. Very, very quick. I mean, the cast is Paul Kay, Vince Vaughn, and James Cromwell. Really, are the three main cast stars in it. A funny tale about the rise of a kid off a council estate who infiltrates the world of lawn bowls, basically, and with Vince Vaughn, the big brash American, turns it into a media powerhouse and turns it into a sexy game. It tries to play off kind of class wars and some of these things, but generally it's just a funny film. Johnny Vegas is in it as well, for even more comic relief. But I really like Paul Kay. I think he's very underrated as a comedic actor for in British films. But if you haven't seen it, definitely go out of your way to watch it, because it's a proper laugh. And I've sat on the wall where it was filmed in Torquay when I was very little as well, so that has a special place in my heart as well. So that's what I've been watching this week.
I do sometimes find that British comedy can be very disappointing, shall we say. But Blackball definitely doesn't fall into that camp. I remember really enjoying that movie. Even though it's not normally the type of thing that gets me, but yeah. Dennis Penny's Paul Kay, fantastic.
You look at the cover of it, the cover art, and it belongs in a co-op DVD bin at the end of an aisle. It just has that look about it. Do you know what I mean? That you wouldn't like. Why would you pick this up? It'll be a car boot sale, but honestly, give it the time of day. You'll enjoy it.
That's a film I haven't thought about in a long time. I'm quite glad you reminded me of that. I might watch that myself this week.
Get on the list.
Just put it online.
Yeah. It's going to be all week. It's going to be that and Does It Fry?
Does it fry? Aye.
Fantastic.
So that moves me on to my question, I guess. So, lads, I want to know the biggest cinematic letdown. So something that you had really, really got excited over. Then when it came to seeing it either at the cinema or at home or whatever, you were really bitterly disappointed. Andy, do you want to tell me about yours?
Okay, my honourable mention is going to be the Evil Dead reboot. Love the original trilogy. The trailer for the reboot looked decent, and I just found the film absolute dog shit. So it's terrible. And you have to wait so long before you even get Bruce Campbell. But that's another story. But this question I've been waiting for so long, because it's my chance to talk about the Transformers films. Okay, so I'm a big fan of the original G1 animated series. Over there, I'm pointing behind me for the listeners. There is a Devastator toy with all the original parts where they all fit together. So when I found out that Devastator was coming into the second film, I was so excited to see that. And they just make him this absolute fucking joke where his balls are in John Turturro's face. Like, I was expecting this real mean, horrible world killer, and it just ended up being a piss poor joke. I was so excited. And I remember the adverts, the trailers for it looked brilliant. It looked like it was going to be action-packed. And I liked the first film. So I thought they're going to take that, they're going to run with it, they're going to expand it. And they just shit the bed with it big time. And like an idiot, for every single one that's been released, so the third one, the fourth one, I was still excited thinking, this will be the return to form. It'll be just like the first one. And it just wasn't. It was just shit every time. Like, I don't even bother going to the cinema to see them anymore because I know they're going to be terrible.
Wow.
There's my next rant for you.
Didn't like it. Didn't like it then, Andy. No.
I did not.
Stu, can we have the rebuttal?
Thing is, when we all saw that, I can't remember what car it was now. There was an advert for a car that was Transformers-like. I can't remember what it was. Years before the films even came out, and it was like a Transformers film could look like this, and I can't think off the top of my head what it was now. And when I went to, it was the same thing. I was more Bogey from Mars than Transformers, but when I liked it good enough, and with everything else, He-Man and everything like this, but I just thought, well, it's a film. Keep it separate from what it was before. Don't be disappointed. I just accepted it for what it was. I think Goldie was the same, and with them messing with things and changing too much and all that stuff. But all very valid points, especially if you. And I know when the Uncharted film comes out in a couple of years, if it ever happens at all, I know I'm going to be disappointed if I compare it to the games because it's a film, it's not a game. So just from that point of view, I just take it for what it is, and it's nonsense. It's fun.
Even compared to the first film, though, it is such a step down in quality.
Yeah.
Like the first one, don't get me wrong, the first one's not Oscar worthy, but it's good fun. And each one, it's not even diminishing returns. It's so much more than that. There's just nothing of interest once you've got past the first film, sadly.
I watched the last night again, probably before lockdown, and watching it on the projector is too much because there's too much going on. It's like every film gets bigger and bigger, and in that case, it's not for the best sometimes because it's too much on screen at once and it messes with your head. But I know it's a bit of a parody talking about Transformers every single week, but it is films I'll just put on. If in one of them moods where you don't know what to watch, just put Transformers on. It don't matter. That's what they are.
Fair enough.
But they don't make me mad.
No.
What's
yours, Stu?
After watch The Force Awakens, and we was really looking forward to The Last Jedi. And no, going back on it though, and watching it again, it's not as bad as the first time when we were just utterly confused. But yeah, the one, as soon as the question came up, the first thing that sprung to mind was Matrix Reloaded, because it was just down the line. Now we've got the full three of them, and they do make more sense. But having it, and we all knew it was a trilogy, and it was going to be a cliffhanger at the end. But it was just so different to the original that it was just like, what the fuck was that? And it took a long time to kind of. It probably took till watching the third one and then watching them again as the three to get over the fact that it was an all right film, but in that initial cinema disappointment, that's head and shoulders above everything else.
Is Reloaded the one that has the Zion sex party scene?
Yeah.
Or is that that just didn't need to be there?
Yeah, it's in the first 15-20 minutes as well.
Yeah. That stuck out like a sore thumb for me. That.
Have you seen them now, Andy?
No, still not. I've got no excuse. I'm in lockdown, for crying out loud, and
you learned that box set at Christmas.
Yeah, I know. I just haven't got the energy to look at it. You keep telling me how shit they are, and if they were 90-minute films, I'd just play through it. But knowing that they're like, what, 2.25 hours, something like that, just seems like a real effort.
When I was thinking about this question to answer, one thing came to mind. Now, I don't know if you remember a film at the start of what are we in now? The 10s? Are we in the tens? Well, we were
We're in the 20s
10s.
now.
We're in the 20s now. We were in the tens. Called Battle Los Angeles. So let me paint the scene for you. Basically, it's one of the. It was such a good trailer. This exactly whoever put the trailer together deserves every penny that they got paid for. It had a really, really haunting music called "The Sky's Gone Dim," which is on YouTube. I can't pronounce the guy who made it, so I'm not going to attempt to insult him by doing it. And it just looked like it was going to be an action-packed alien invasion film, which is right up my street, but have a little bit more substance to it, have a little bit more drama, and be maybe a little darker. And what it ended up being was just an incredibly run-of-the-mill film where it just forces all of the cliches upon you, like, you know, including like bringing in one of the members of the army where it's his last shift, you know, it's his last, not even tour of duty, like it's his last day, that kind of like easy, you know, trying to get us to care about the different soldiers by giving them a minute long you know, like character development, and it was just crap. Basically it was shit, and I was really disappointed because it's panned a little bit. But War of the Worlds, I really enjoyed the Tom Cruise War of the Worlds because I just love that alien invasion film. Signs, I love that film as well, even though it's a bit crap because it's about an alien invasion film. I just love that world, and it was meant to be the one for me, and I feel very personal and bitter about it because it ended up being awful. Yeah, and we'll probably tag it into the audio of the show, but the theme tune alone, when you listen to it, will make you think it's a different film to what the film actually is. And that's what sometimes I feel really cheated when I see a trailer. So, for example, the Cray twins film, that was Tom Hardy. I can't remember what it's called now. It made it out to be like a real action film, as you'd expect from a film about the Crays. But it was much more of a love story than it was an action film. But the trailer made it out to be that way, and I felt cheapened by that as well in a way. But yeah, Battle Los Angeles is up there as a really big disappointment for me in terms of a film. Have you seen it, Stu?
Yeah, I had the same thing. I went to the cinema to watch it based on the trailer.
I know, we were duped. That's got to be 30 quid there down the pan between the two of us on that.
Yes, there was another one because there was I can't remember what it was called.
I know exactly I know the film you're thinking about as well.
It was like it was really low budget, and it was. I think it's got a sequel now as well. And
are we on about the one where at the end he becomes the alien?
No, that's the South African guy. That's
no, not District 9. There's another one where like he becomes part of the machine at the end, like the part of the
I know
Skyline.
Skyline.
Yeah, that's the one.
I love Skyline. It's proper trash, but it's a good fun, just no brainer watch.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was going to be. I thought it's a bit like when we were due with Man of Steel as well. That looked incredible from the trailer, and then it was just all right.
No, I quite enjoyed Man of Steel.
It didn't stand up to its trailer though. That was
true. Because when thinking of trailers that massively let us down, Suicide Squad. I remember really loving that trailer. That haunting. I Told a Joke, was it the song? And it looked like it was going to be something special, and it was just a wet fart of a film. Just terrible. Yeah, so that's, to be honest, there's probably more than I care to remember that have done this. So the next question, that would be yourself, Stu.
Well, mine for weirdness is I said cross media in the description, but it's probably best. What's the best film that came from a TV show, or a TV show that came from a film? We'll go to you, back to you, Andy. Go on.
Okay, so my honourable mention for the second time is going to be The Evil Dead. So that original trilogy is fantastic, and Ash versus the Evil Dead, the TV series that spun out of it, was it 15 years later, I think it was, is really good fun. it's managed to keep the same tone as the films. If you're a fan of the Evil Dead films, you will love the TV series. Thoroughly recommend it. And it's got a proper end to the story as well. So it's what you want. But the one I was going to go for, the best one, would be the Muppets. Because this is something that it started way, way back in the 1950s. I know that their TV series started in the 70s. But we've had several iterations of a TV series. We've had numerous films. It's managed to keep up with the zeitgeist. That last one with Jason Segel writing it was fantastic. It's one of the best family films I've ever seen. It's incredible. And there are very few films that have spanned that length of time that can still feel relevant now. And I think The Muppets is just one that's managed to transcend its age. I think it's a really good series, I suppose, for want of a better word, because it just encompasses everything you want. Matt, what about yourself?
Yeah, and honourable mention wise, only because it's basically a long version of the TV show, but I wanted to bring up the In-Betweeners and the In-Betweeners movie. And the reason I bring it up, is I use an honourable mention and as a quick point, is because I really hope that in 10, 20, 30 years' time, the In-Betweeners gets the, not respect, because I don't think it wants to be respected, but gets the appreciation as one of the most important comedic films of a TV show of a generation. I'm not saying it's an Only Fools and Horses or it's a Porridge or it's, anything like that, but for a period of time, In-Betweeners encapsulated comedy, British comedy, and it was so much better than what was going on in terms of like American Pie and Not Another Teen Movie and all that kind of stuff. And maybe it's just because it's in a British secondary school. But I just really hope that time is good to the In-Betweeners and doesn't look at some of either the sexist or casually racist things that are in it, and actually looks at it as being really important in terms of how it defined a generation. It defined language, that people use and stuff now. And I just hope time is kind to it. One thing from a more serious point of view, the TV adaptation of the 1973 film Westworld, and the HBO Westworld that we've got now, purely down as it's got QuestionCast favourite cage fighting Ed Harris involved, who is excellent in it. And it explores the question of humanity, not only within humans but within androids, and what is sentient. And it's just a really slick, well put together show. I think the film I Love You Man talks about how HBO shows are just that good, and it's a joke, but it's actually true, because Westworld is so slick and so good, and it's really, really worth your time if you enjoy kind of dystopia and sci-fi and a little bit of drama and everything that goes with it. It's a really excellent watch.
The only reason that didn't make my list is because I've not seen the film, but that TV series is just it's as good as Game of Thrones. It's that level of production. It's phenomenal. It's
top shelf, absolutely. In terms of a TV show, it's up there in the godlike tier.
Definitely.
Yeah, I had one for me going either way, but honourable mention, of course, to Bean, the disaster movie.
Oh yes,
as a film adaptation of a TV show in the same universe. You didn't need to see the series whatsoever to enjoy that film, and it's utter greatness. But now that from film to TV, when we Fargo, which
very good.
It's all, I think all 3 seasons are on Netflix at the minute. So if you ain't with again a cast that wouldn't look out of place in an A-list film, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very, very good. But the one I thought about straight away when I thought of the question was you're turning a kind of schlocky 60s, 70s TV show into a blockbuster film franchise. Mission Impossible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It did. When you look at what happened with Man of Uncle, which was similar kind of era, which I loved Man of Uncle, the series, and the film was okay, but it was never anywhere near Mission Impossible level. I just thought, well, they've used source material there and ran with it to a massive degree, and how it just carries on and on and on. It don't matter how old Tom Cruise gets, he still gets something. Does his own stunts and just does his own thing, and you could argue that every single one of them is better than the last, a bit like Fast and Furious.
Yeah, they are, aren't they? There's very few, because that first Mission Impossible was okay, and if you stopped there, you would be missing out on so many great films. That last one was brilliant. Really enjoyed it, and Henry Cavill I thought was superb in that film.
I'm glad you said that, because I haven't given Mission Impossible the time of day. If I'm honest,
really good. So we watch. Well, I tried to get Annabelle to watch it as well, and we watched the first, and she really don't like it because the first one's more like an espionage spy film, and that's what it is. And it only takes the again sticking to the theme of John Woo to come and spunk up the second one, and that's the second one with Dougray Scott as well in possibly his best role up until that woman. That it's just that they are just really, really good films in their own right. I mean, if you like the Bourne films for their kind of genre, Mission Impossible is the same tier in theirs. It's really excellent.
Yeah, I think Bourne is a decent comparison. It's like if Fast and Furious films were in the Bourne universe.
That's happening.
So it's got that big balls to the wall kind of thing with it. Really good. I think you'd like them, Matt. I really do. And it's one of those it just gets better and better.
I'm guessing the Simon Pegg effect has an influence, Andy. And
yeah, definitely. It's almost like. Oh, carry on, Stu.
No, so he's a bit of a bit part player to start with, and then he kind of gets integrated into the team. It's more when Ving Rhames, if anything else, is really good in them.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Unexpectedly.
I think Simon Pegg, in the later ones, he does help with some of the script writing. So you do get that sense of Simon Pegg in them, which obviously, as you know, I'm a massive fan. So, yeah, they're very much up my boulevard. Yeah.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah,
and Limp Bizkit soundtrack as well.
I'm sold. Why don't you kick off with that, Stu? I would have got it immediately.
I actually bought the soundtrack CD for the second one, the whole album.
Of course, it's Take a Look Around, isn't it? The song Take a Look Around. Oh my god, that Mission Impossible 2, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Also, Metallica, I Disappear is on Mission Impossible 2 as well. The song that they made for that film as well, for that soundtrack, I should say. So maybe its roots lie a little more in rock and heavy metal than I thought.
And Tandy Newton from Westworld is in Mission Impossible 2 as well.
There we go.
Mm.
Okay, I said I was going to watch Hamilton, and I haven't got around to that yet either. But so don't want to start you off, Stu. Sorry, mate.
I've watched it 4 times now.
Yeah, I'm on my 4th. Yeah.
Good grief.
It's just so endlessly watchable, and then the soundtrack goes on as soon as I get in the car as well.
I've never ever watched it. I know this has gone to Hamilton talk again, but no film has ever no piece of whatever this is has never grabbed me like this ever with anything. I normally watch it and then listen to a few songs later on, but I'm almost like addicted to it. I need to stop.
I know it's probably a good question for another QuestionCast, so maybe we'll use it, but I've never really grabbed a soundtrack from a film and then jumped on it and been that into it, except for the Rocky films. And all some of the tracks that came off that, some of like the real 80s power ballad song, Hearts on Fire, that kind of wheelhouse, which
that's a banger. That is, to be fair.
It ticks all the. If that's coming on a Christmas do, or if I'm in Reflex or Pop World, you better believe I'm strutting my stuff to the dance floor for that.
I think mine, the one I bought, even though I hadn't seen the film until we recently reviewed it on our other podcast when we did the FilmCast episode of Goal.
Oh yeah.
So on that soundtrack, there's like Kasabian and Oasis, and it's very much my kind of music. So that's the only one I ever jumped on. And like I say, I'd never even seen the film until a couple of months ago.
I think that the film soundtracks apart from Mission Impossible, I was thinking about this now. There was one, and then I thought, no, there's actually 2. There's the one, the soundtrack to the Full Monty.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bit of everything, and I think still featuring Gary Glitter as well, controversially. But the the other one was Kevin and Perry Go Large.
Oh yes.
Bloody hell.
The soundtrack to that is as a kind of time capsule of the time. That's exactly what that is.
I watched that film not that long ago, like a couple of months back, and it's not like it's a good film by any stretch of the imagination, but it does very much transport you back to that late 90s sort of feel. It might not work for everybody, but I properly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I don't think anyone in their 20s now would even get that whatsoever.
No, I don't think it would work. But I love Kathy Burke. She's one of the actors I will watch in anything. I just think she's fantastic.
It's funny. I was at the loft the other day, and the one soundtrack that I do own, and I've got a physical copy of. Believe it or not, I've only ever been to one convention in my entire life, like a Comic-Con.
Right.
And this was like at Aldersley Stadium when Phantom Menace was out. So this is how long ago we're talking. And I've got the Phantom Menace soundtrack signed by Larry Ward, who played Greedo. What? Who has that? I don't know. Like, so that's up in the loft at the moment. I don't think I'll be retiring on the proceeds of that sale.
Probably not. No.
But if there's anybody out there listening that is really into their soundtracks signed by bit part Star Wars characters, then hook me up. I'm sure we can cut a deal.
That's fair enough.
I won't hold my breath.
Yeah. So, fellas, my question, after last week when we discovered the existence of the Beige Volvo trilogy, I was wondering, what is the greatest trilogy of all time? Matt, would you like to start the ball rolling on that one? Okay.
Well, I don't want to steal Stu's thunder here or anything, so I feel he might pick this. So I've gone a little different, and instead of greatest as in kind of critically acclaimed, one trilogy that I really enjoy is actually the Lecter trilogy, as in Hannibal Lecter, Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal, and Red Dragon. Hannibal was a bit of a disappointment on the really creepy and tension, suspenseful Silence of the Lambs, but Red Dragon was a real return to form, the prequel to all of this going on. I just really like Anthony Hopkins. Is an actor that I really haven't invested enough time into. I haven't seen a lot of his work, but in those films, he just creates such an entertaining villain, or you could even describe as an anti-hero, because you enjoy watching him be this sadistic cannibal. And I think the films are just put together really, really nicely, and based on actually a question that we've already discovered, turned into a really excellent program as well, which is worth a lot of people's time. So for purely entertainment's purpose, I'm going with the Lecter trilogy, because their horror, sci-fi, anything dark and morbid is my wheelhouse. So that's what I'm going for. Obviously, there are bigger, more critically acclaimed trilogies, but for something that really ticks all the boxes for me, it's really up there.
Yeah, and there's also another Westworld actor in there, isn't there?
Of course.
So
it's
a running theme.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
exactly.
Have you ever seen the original Red Dragon, Manhunter?
No. I know it exists, but I haven't seen it, so I can't compare it. But I understand. I think they're worldly different from what I read.
Yeah, I prefer Manhunter, to be fair. Obviously, it's not a different actor as well, and it is, like you said, a completely different vibe from a different time. Yeah. But if you can find it, it's going to be very obscure to get hold of. If you find it on DVD somewhere, then I'd definitely give it a chance. Yeah,
I will do, because I want to compare the two, to be fair.
So what about yourself, Stu? What's your go-to trilogy?
Well, I'm amazed that Matt ain't going for it, really, because obviously Blade is the answer.
That is not what I was expecting to come from you.
No, it wasn't at all.
No, there's a few honourable mentions. There's Blade, Naked Gun as well.
Mm-hmm.
Austin Powers for the silly ones, but obviously Lord of the Rings, by hands down, no question whatsoever. I know you're playing playing with the rules now because of the Hobbit being its own thing and the connecting world and whatever. But as a trilogy of films made together, you can't. I suppose you could if you really wanted to watch just one of them. You'd be a bit mad, but as to watch them as a whole package, which you have to really do, it's exceptional. You can't really beat it for me. It's just we're in context. Before they came out, I wasn't a fantasy dragons kind of person whatsoever. I paid no attention to any of that nonsense. I was always sci-fi and Star Wars and that way inclined. I never got into that kind of stuff whatsoever. But me and Dean went to watch that film every Christmas, and then you'd buy the extended DVD at the start of December, watch that, and then go to the cinema straight after for 3 years in a row, and it was just incredible. And I for the same reason what we talked about earlier about watching films over and over again and keeping them special, I haven't watched it for 2 years because I know them so well, and like when we watched Face Off and I remembered every line, I don't want that to happen with Lord of the Rings, so I've got to give myself a break from it intentionally. So I'll probably go back to it this year because I mean, even just thinking about it, I miss it. You know, it's sitting over there. But yeah, Lord of the Rings, hands down, no question whatsoever for me.
So would you take the Lord of the Rings over episodes 4, 5, and 6? Yeah,
I would.
Okay.
I thought before Lord of the Rings came out, I'm presuming that's what your answer is going to be because that's the normal answer. But yeah, for me, it's Lord of the Rings over original Star Wars. Yeah.
Okay, I'm quite surprised. Knowing you, I would have thought you'd have gone for a Star Wars answer there, to be perfectly honest. Interesting. So mine, I'm going to give an honourable mention for the third time this week to the Evil Dead trilogy. I just love it. It doesn't get the love it deserves. Yeah, it's such a wonderful set of films. That first one is genuinely terrifying in parts. The second one is a good old-fashioned horror film. And the third one, where they're throwing the comedic elements. And it's a bit of a romp. It's a really good trilogy. But that's just my honourable mention. Normally, I would probably go for the Cornetto trilogy, as you both know. For me, it's 2 10s and an 8. I think, those films are just fantastic. But the trilogy I'm going to go for, it's going to take us full circle. And it's the Dark Knight trilogy. Mm-hmm. Batman Begins is... I mean, the film starts at a 10. Batman Begins is a fantastic movie that I think is often overlooked because of how great The Dark Knight is. But The Dark Knight's an 11. It's that damn good. And then I think a lot of people do poo-poo the final film. But for me, again, it's such a good film. It's actually a film which has got a storyline of a man who has given everything to the city he loves and he's now broken down. But he's got one last job to do. And it doesn't feel cheesy, which I think a sign-off to a superhero film can do. And for me, it never gets quite to that point. The villains in all 3 films are entirely believable human beings.
Yes, brother.
That's right, yeah. You never look at it and think yes, I know it's based on a comic book character, but at the same time, it's basically a detective who just happens to wear a rubber suit. If he was just in a dirty Mac and it was Columbo, you wouldn't think twice. It's a very similar sort of feel that it's just what he wears that makes him look different to your average, hero. So for me, it would be the Dark Knight trilogy.
Yeah, pretty much grounded in realism is exactly what the tagline of it should be.
Mm.
But I was going to say that there's been no honourable mention for The Godfather.
I think it's just based on there's so many trilogies that its third installment absolutely brutalizes it, and that's where The Godfather is for me, unfortunately.
It's the perfect duology. The third film is just
and funnily, the Matrix for me is the reason why that didn't make it, because the first Matrix film is so up there. It's so new metal. Which is the time, like the music that I grew up with. It's so new metal. It's those big long black trench coats, and it's just everything that encapsulates what I was growing up The Matrix, loved it, but the third one, and it just didn't. It did nothing for me. And The Godfather, unfortunately, like, excellent. One thing I wanted to ask you guys: are there any quadrilogies? are there any that actually the fourth film ruins it entirely for you, or really takes away? So mine, for example, would be, I know films have come out since, but there was a massive time jump. Alien and the fourth Alien film, which Resurrection. It was really, it was just awful. Absolutely hated it. Took away. I mean, Alien 3 was a stretch with a dog alien. But it was Alien. It was good enough for me. I liked the idea of it being on like a prison colony planet and all that came around. But the fourth one, it just ruined it for me. So, is there anything that immediately jumps out to you guys, like a film that pushed the franchise too far?
Yeah, I mean, the one film that I refuse to accept exists is The Crystal Skull. Like, the first three indie films are fucking brilliant, but the fourth one of the franchise is... I know we mentioned it last time out about the CG of the monkeys and stuff in it, and it's so subpar for that cast and that director that it's an insult to what came before it. So if either of you two would have said that your favourite trilogy is the Indiana Jones trilogy, I would have perfectly accepted that, because I just ignore the fourth one. It doesn't exist.
There's so many of them are like that. Like, Stu, what? Obviously, you're massively into Die Hard. Where were you with the latest Die Hard film in comparison to the originals?
The first two are superb. They're just, the first two are tens. I mean, there's some years when I prefer Die Harder to the first one. Sometimes. Vengeance is all right. Vengeance is probably 8-ish. Die Hard 4.0, where you're jumping over helicopters and it gets a bit nonsense. And then it should have just been that. Just leave it there. And so the fourth one of that is probably a stretch as well, to be honest. When you bring his son back and all that stuff, and this Die Hard Vendetta game was better than the last film. But yeah, it's just a case of more is not best sometimes. And I know you were going to say with Crystal Skull, that was what I was thinking as well. But there's Superman 4.
See, I think Superman 4 is better than Superman 3. Neither's good, to be honest, but
no,
it just edges it.
Superman 4, it was just throw as much nonsense at the screen as you possibly can do and see what sticks because you've run out of money kind of situation. But I mean, that's what it looked like.
It was cheap as shit, wasn't it? The budget must have just been $0. It was awful.
It's a bit like RoboCop 3 as well. I know
I never saw it.
The first one, excellent. The second one, okay. The third one, where he gets a jetpack and he can fly and he can take his arm off with a gun. And then the fourth one, which is the series, just completely ruins it all. It completely ruins everything. The prime directives, they're called. And it was like a PG daytime Saturday TV. Yeah, exactly.
Good God.
For RoboCop. So he doesn't swear. You don't see any violence or anything like that, and the bloke just looks like he's got cancer rather than being a cyborg. So it's just not very good at all. And it kind of, I think Goldie sold me the prime directives for about £5 on DVD. There's 3 of them, 3 films, 3 extra films that are just one whole box of nonsense.
So Stu, I've got a question for you then. Prime Directive RoboCop or WCW RoboCop?
WCW, because Prime Directives is just so bad.
I'd want a RoboCop that had teamed up with Sting as well. If I was, if I was
absolutely.
You know what? I'd even take the Joe Kinnaman RoboCop over the Prime Directives, and I know that film gets a lot of shit because it should have just been called something else other than RoboCop, because it's an all right sci-fi film in its own right. It's got moments, but It's not RoboCop at all.
So, going on about quadrilogies, where do you stand on the Mad Max foursome? Because obviously I know you've got your first three, which are obviously Mel Gibson, and then you've got your fourth one, which is Tom Hardy. I think that's possibly that. If that ends now, that has gone out on a high. Those first three are fine; they're not bad films, but the fourth one is like twice as good as the next closest one for me.
Fury Road's excellent, isn't it? It really is special. I mean, I think I might have seen one of the original Mad Max years ago, so I can't really compare them to Fury Road. But if Fury Road is a standalone piece, is absolutely excellent. Stu, have you seen them? Are you more a fan of them?
I watched them in the build up to Fury Road coming out. So I was in the same boat. I hadn't seen them for a long. I mean, I think I watched them when I was a kid. And I remember watching the third one with Tina Turner in. I remember watching that when my nan was alive, and she died in '95. So,
still,
if that even works, or if that's kind of some kind of warped memory, I don't know. But yeah, the Fury Road's absolutely excellent. And have you seen the black and white version now?
Not yet. It's something I want to try and find, but I've just not been able to yet.
I'm sure it's on the Blu-ray. It's worth buying just for that. Because that, you could call it as a noir piece. Just doing that to it just works. Yeah. So I'll agree with you in that one. That's a rare case of the fourth one being better. Oh, another one, Lethal Weapon 4.
Yeah.
It has no right being decent at all after such a long time, and in still not being retired. And being very old to this shit. With Jet Li, the fourth one, it's all right.
It's good fun, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's another one where the series. I know a lot of people like that series. I never watched it, a single bit of it, just because I couldn't get the image of the original two out of my head when I'd be watching it. Right. Yeah, I think that's as foursomes go.
Yeah, there's a lot worse out there. I think what I quite like, the third one's a bit of a letdown, but the Scream films, I quite enjoyed all four of those. I mean, the third one's watchable. It's not great, but the ones either side, I thought they were really good. Wes Craven at his best at points, I felt.
Well, that defined a generation of like slasher flick, didn't it? The Scream films. By the time we got to the end of that, I'm concerned it was a little bit of a parody of itself towards the end, but for what they did culturally and how it defined like the 90s kind of slasher film, you can't say a bad word about it, really.
That's another one as well. The TV series is very good.
I've heard that. Yeah,
I saw the first season and I heard the second season went off the rails a bit, but the first one I thought was decent.
It ends because it doesn't really end, and they bring it back for a Halloween special. So you have to kind of watch the special to get the end of the second series.
Right, okay.
Which was a weird way of doing things. And I think it was only about a 2 or 3 week waiting at the end anyway. But it's the fact that it's listed as a special rather than the last episode of the season. So it does wrap it up really well.
Fair. I always intended to go back and watch the second season of it, but then I just read that it went a little bit too crazy, so I never gave it another go. But I'll try and get back to that. Right. Okay. Anything else, gents?
I think we've hammered the trilogies to death. I'm looking forward to catching up on some of these and seeing some things that I've haven't seen for quite some time, and having a look to see how they've kind of aged over time.
I've made a few notes tonight, which I don't always do, so I think there's going to be some watching going on in the next week or so. But we do have some other films to watch before we do. We're getting all lovey-dovey, gents. We're going to be watching Nicolas Cage, being the sweetheart that he is, in City of Angels and Captain Corelli's Mandolin. I'm going to apologise now for for at least one of those two films. But yeah, that's what we're going to be discussing on next week's Picture Pod. So it just leaves for me to say thank you for joining us on the latest episode of the QuestionCast. We hope we've given you some food for thought. I know I've definitely got some, and I am very much looking forward to Does It Fry, I've got to be honest. If you've got any questions that you want answering, if you've got any answers to the questions that we've been asking tonight, email is cagefightingpod@gmail.com, or you can get us on Twitter @cagefightingpod. And while you're at it, please remember to subscribe so that we can appear in your feed every single week. If you could also rate and review, that would really help spread the word of what we're trying to do here. And you know what else spreads the word? Actually spreading the word. Tell your friends about us, and let's try and grow this, and we can have a conversation about how much we all love Nick Cage. So for this week, Stu, would you like to say goodbye?
Goodbye. Listen harder.
Matt, would you like to say goodbye?
Take it easy, guys. Look after yourself.
And it's a goodbye from me. And remember, be excellent to each other.